President Zelensky's popularity in Ukraine is surging after he stood up to Donald Trump in defense of his country and as he continues to courageously stand up to Russia from Russia's unlawful invasion of Ukraine. Just a week or so after Donald Trump said that Zelenskyy had a 4% approval rating, which was a lie, and just a few weeks after Donald Trump attacked Zelenskyy in the Oval Office and demanded that there be elections held in Ukraine, which is a Putin talking point, we're now seeing Zelensky's approval surging. It's at 72%. It's getting close to where it was almost at the beginning of the war, the unlawful invasion by Ukraine. Zelensky's approval rating continues to grow higher, now at 72%, with only 12% of Ukrainians in favor of holding elections now. When Donald Trump was lying and saying Zelensky's approval was at 4%, it was in the mid-50s. Now it is surging. When you stand up to Donald Trump, what happens is your people appreciate that. Trump's pressures continue to produce the opposite effects. Just to remind you, here was a few weeks back when Donald Trump was claiming that Zelensky's approval was at 4%. No, Donald, it's at 72%, and only 12% of Ukrainians want elections during the unlawful invasion by Russia. Play this clip.
We have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine. Well, we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site.
Now, Zelenskyy has been a master negotiator with the help of Europe and Canada as well. What happened was Zelensky's delegation met in Saudi Arabia with the delegation led by Marco Rubio. And one of the things that came out of this meeting in Saudi Arabia from earlier of the week is Zelenskyy and Ukraine agreed to a ceasefire under the appropriate terms. Now, it was something that they would have wanted before as well, under the appropriate terms with the appropriate security guarantees. And Zelenskyy was brilliant here because he knew that, number one, if Russia would agree to it, it would be good actually for Ukraine. It's good for the people, first and foremost. But also Zelenskyy knew that Putin would never actually agree to it. So it was the perfect way to deliver a deal, right? Because that's how Donald Trump's transactional mind thinks, and also expose Putin. So a few days back, here was the headline: Ukraine has expressed readiness to accept the USA's suggestion of an immediate introduction of a temporary 30-day ceasefire that can be prolonged by mutual agreement of the parties on the condition that the Russian Federation accepts and simultaneously carries it out. The United States will make it known to Russia that mutuality on the part of Russia is key towards achieving peace. The United States immediately canceled the pause in exchange of intelligence data and reinstates military aid to Ukraine. So that was a big deal. And also, do you notice how the statement, even though this suggestion and this idea came from Ukraine and Europe, kind of gave the United States credit for coming up with this idea? Just look at the delegation. By the way, just look how much bigger the Ukrainians are than Marco Rubio right there, and Walls, Donald Trump's national security advisor. And one of the things I'll just show you from this press conference that Rubio and Walls had is that they said basically, you know, the ball's now in Russia's court. Play this clip.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally thank, we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball's now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
Okay, so they said the ball is now in Russia's court. So what did Putin do right after? So Putin's response to a ceasefire offer, as Matthew Luxmore explains, was to don military fatigues, head to the embattled Kursk region, and announce Russia will keep fighting till Ukraine is ousted from its land. A pretty clear message about what he thinks of Zelensky's overture. Here, I want you to watch this right here. And by the way, while that was going on, I know our corporate media here in the US is not covering it, but I think it's pretty significant that it seems like Russia attacked a United States military shipment on March 10th, 2024. A U.S. tanker contracted by the Defense Department, which had military fuel on board and was stationary off the coast of Britain, was hit by another cargo ship, which was being captained or mastered by a Russian and by a crew of Russians. Here's how it's being reported here. Initially suspected as an intentional Russian act of sabotage on American military interests off the coast of Britain, there was a Russian captain at the helm of a Russian crewed ship called the So Long. They were arrested by British authorities after ramming the Stella Immaculate, which was this ship that had a tanker carrying jet fuel for the United States military. Seems to be intentional criminal, dare I say, well, I'll tell the terrorist attack or a military attack at the same time, and seems to be directly related to this deal that happened in Ukraine. I know our corporate media doesn't cover it, but they cover it on Sky News. So let me just bring it to our American audience so you can see what's actually happening in the world, where it seems that Russia actually attacked an American ship with American military defense jet fuel. Could you imagine if that was the other way around and it was Ukrainians who did that? And by the way, you don't hear a peep from Donald. Anyway, let's play this from Sky News.
Breaking news on that maritime collision on Monday in the North Sea off the coast of Yorkshire. And it's being reported that the So Long ship, which was, of course, the one that was moving and crashed into the stationary Stena Immaculate, that the master of that ship is a Russian national, that the rest of the crew were Russian and also Filipino. That's being reported in just the last few moments.
So going back to this military meeting that Vladimir Putin held in the Kursk region, let me just share with you what he said. We have an AI translation here. This is not Putin's actual voice, but it's an AI rendition of his voice. But you'll hear him basically say, we need to basically escalate the war and we need to immediately take over this region. We want to see immediate victories in the war. And so the response to the ceasefire agreement by Ukraine was met in Russia by an escalation. Here, play this clip.
At the same time, I also want to remind you that foreign mercenaries do not fall under the Geneva Convention of 1949. If people who are on the territory of the Kursk region commit crimes here against civilians, oppose our armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and special services in accordance with the laws of the Russian Federation and are terrorists. This is how their actions are classified by the General Prosecutor's Office of Russia. And this is precisely why the investigative committee of the Russian Federation has opened a criminal case against them on charges of terrorism. Just now, Valery Vasilyevich mentioned the prisoners, but we must undoubtedly regard these people as terrorists in accordance with the laws of the Russian Federation.
So Donald Trump was asked about this during his product placement event with Elon Musk. And Donald Trump talked about the ceasefire. And he goes, well, now we have to go to Putin. We'll see what Putin has to say. Here, play this clip.
But very importantly, and I said it, Ukraine, ceasefire, Ukraine. Ceasefire, just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia, and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get.
Okay, you have to go to Putin, see what Putin has to say. Putin's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, did an interview with these like right-wing podcasters, because I guess right-wing podcasters now like glaze the Russian leaders. So Lavrov didn't talk anyway about the ceasefire, as Timothy Milanov explains about this podcast that they're inviting like Russian foreign ministers on these right-wing podcasts. Nothing on ceasefire or American efforts to break the U.S. off China. They go, American efforts to break U.S. off China are futile. Lavrov explains that Rubio recognizes a multipolar world where countries' power is defined by its strength. Smaller countries are second rate. We still want other Ukrainian territories where ethnic Russians live. In other words, Foreign Minister Lavrov saying, no, he doesn't even, the level of how they view Trump is with such contempt and disrespect, or they view him as so weak. They don't even mention the ceasefire deal at all, because they treat him like, we're not even talking about it. We're not even going to mention his fake deals. They go, look, we're going to continue to try to engage in this unlawful invasion. And America's stupid, basically, if they think that their grand strategy is to separate us from China. As our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, explains, okay, so Rubio announced Ukraine signed a ceasefire agreement, and now the ball is in Russia's court. But it seems like Putin's response is to escalate the war against Ukraine. So maybe Trump and Vance can finally admit that Ukraine wants peace and Putin wants war. Of course they won't. The question is why. Here, Donald Trump was asked yesterday about this, and he was asked, are you confident that Putin will keep the ceasefire? Putin's not even acknowledging the existence of it, but play this clip.
News. Are you confident that Putin will keep the ceasefire, considering that he's broken them in the past?
We haven't spoken to him yet with substance, because we just found out and we just were able to get Ukraine to agree. So,
and then going back to President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, I mean, steady leadership. He knows how to deal with Trump. He knows how to, he didn't give into a horrible rare earth, mineral deal without security guarantees. He's navigated this, I think, masterfully with the assistance of the Europeans behind the scenes. Zelenskyy posted the following: we must move toward peace, toward security guarantees, and we need to free our people. We are determined to work as quickly as possible with our partners. The key factor is our partners' ability to ensure Russia's readiness not to deceive, but to genuinely end the war, because right now Russian strikes have not stopped. Around 100 Shahed drones attack Ukraine each night. Missile strikes are regular. Some of our civilian infrastructure and ports have been hit, unfortunately, including in Odessa. We continue our work on diplomatic fronts to ensure that all necessary conditions are swiftly in place to apply pressure on Russia to achieve real peace. I am awaiting a report from the Ukrainian delegation that worked in Saudi Arabia, and we are preparing new tasks toward our diplomacy. I think that's exactly how it's done. Now, I want to be very clear. Americans overwhelmingly support Ukraine and not Russia. Yeah, there's a MAGA right-wing extremist group that loves Russia because Trump does. But let me show you this. This was from 2 weeks back. I want to remind you of it, where Democratic Congressmember Tom Suozzi received a huge standing ovation in a Trump +5 congressional district at Hofstra University in Hempstead after talking about how despicable Trump's behavior was in the Oval Office with Zelenskyy. Americans are furious at how Trump was treating Zelenskyy, and Zelenskyy, though, handled it with grace and dignity and strength. And I think Zelensky's put himself in a strong position with his people, a strong position internationally, and a strong negotiating position. It's brilliant stuff. Here, this is Congressmember Suozzi playing.
Listen, everybody's freaking out. Everybody's like, I'm Mr. Let's work together. Let's try and find common ground. And what happened in the White House yesterday, I was so pissed off. I knew you had to get that out of your system.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers, and thanks for watching.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.meidastouch.com. All 100% USA Union made.